Hi, I'm Karla Schaefer, designer for Auntie's Beads, and I will be demonstrating how to make a random pattern flat peyote stitch bracelet. The tools and supplies needed for this project are an 8-0 seed bead, and I'm using 5 different colors to create a mix, plus one of those colors is a dominant color for the edge. You'll need a shank button, English or big eye needle, fire line, and a nipper tool. I'm doing this bracelet based on some comments I received on a video where I was wearing this bracelet. It's a random pattern of mixed seed beads in the center with a border in a solid color. So that's what we're going to go off of. I'm going to be using a mixture of 5 different colors of beads that we have in the 8-0, and I'm also going to use one color of the mix as my border. So the first thing we need to do is add a stop bead to our fire line, and I'm just going to start off with about a yard or more of the fire line, whatever you're comfortable working with. And I want to leave a good tail. I like to leave long tails, 6 to 8 inches. Slip on your bead for your stop and run it back through the opposite way, and that gives your stop bead, and that'll keep all the work on here from sliding off. And we're going to be working with 10 beads at a time. So I'm going to pick up my border color, and then I'm picking up random colors. And then I'm going to pick up the border. So I have 10 beads, and anytime you start peyote, it doesn't come out really until about 2 or 3 rows in. So I have 10 beads. This is my stop bead. This is my border. So I go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. The first thing we're going to do is pick up the border bead. I have separated them even though they're in my mix, just so it keeps me straight. I'm going to pick up the first bead, which will be the border color, and I'm going to slip through the second bead, so that it stacks. Then I'm going to pick up, you can bring your stop bead down and make your work tighter if you like. Then I'm picking up again just a random color, going to skip this bead and go under the next one. And then again, you can make your work too tight. There we go. And as you can see, they're stacking, and then they create slots that we go back and fill in on the second row. And again, just pick your beads up at random. Skip this bead, go in this one. And then here at where I'm going through the border bead color, my last bead that I put on this row will be a random color. And then I'm going to, we've got the first row, 2 rows done, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to pick up the border color. And that's what keeps that color solid. And I'm going through the up bead here. Then I'm picking up my colors at random again and slotting them in the little slots here. And keep your tension. And we're just going in and filling in the slots. And again, I'm at this the edge here, and I've picked up a random color, and I'm going to again flip it over. Just keep your tail out of the way. And I'm picking up the border color again. And you continue this to just about the length of your bracelet. We're going to add a shank button and a loop, so you don't want it exactly, you want it to almost fit around your wrist. Now you can see the, going on our third and fourth row here, you can see the pattern come out. The only thing I'd like to do on this design is not put my border color on the edge. It's the only thing I keep straight. As you can see the border and the pattern coming along here. Okay, now here you can see I've got probably 1.5 inches or so of it done, and you can see a good piece of the pattern coming out, and it is just random, but then it kind of picks up into a pattern that's kind of unique, and that the border is the solid color. So if you just continue on doing this, and as I've mentioned before, I tried to keep the border and pattern off of the very edges, but that's just me. Otherwise, I don't have a pattern. But as you go through, it'll create its own pattern. Almost looks like writing on some of them. So you just continue on this. And again, always start with your border color. Oops. Gotta hang there. Now that I've got the majority of the bracelet done, and I just fit it to my wrist, and it is probably about 1 inch from meeting itself. But we're going to add, as I said, a shank button and a loop, so it doesn't have to exactly meet. Unless, I mean, you can have it meet exactly, and then just adjust your button and your loop accordingly. I'm going to add another row or two. I always like to flip my work over when I go to the next row. That way I'm always starting from this side. Okay. All right, now that I'm satisfied with my length and the way my pattern has come out, I'm going to use this shank button as the closure. So what I want to do is work my way back through my work and tighten up this edge. I'm just going to run it back through. So we're going to run it back through to the other side and then back, and then we're going to work our way to the middle of the work. And then we're going to sew on the shank button. And then just reinforcing this end here because we're going to be stitching on it. And I'm going to come back through till about the middle of the, I'm going to come down probably to the third row or so. Depends on the size of your button. So I've come in and I want to take the button, and you just want to kind of, you want it to be on near the edge of the button of the bracelet. So you just kind of have to gauge it. I may come down just one more row. I'm going to come up out of this bead here, about the middle. Then I'm going to pick up a seed bead, and then I'm going to string on the button, pick up another seed bead, and I'm going to bring it down to the work. And then we're going to run it back through this bead here. We're just going to sew it on here. And I'm not going through the bracelet, I'm going through the beads. I'm just going to kind of make a couple of passes through the bead, back through the button, until you have it nice and secure. You're going to run it up through both of your beads. And if you have to add thread on during your bracelet, which you most likely will, you can just, as you can see in some of our previous peyote bracelets, that you need to make some half hitch knots throughout the work. And just reinforce this button a couple of times, and then we'll be ready to do the loop. I have removed my stop bead, rethreaded my needle, and I have run my line back along this top like we did in the other end just to reinforce it. And I'm coming out the end of the border bead. So the amount of beads needed for the loop depends on the size of your button, and it also depends on how much length you have between the bracelet itself. So it just depends. It's kind of a stitch some beads on. I'm probably going to start with about 12 to 14 beads, and all I'm going to do is just run it through this right here just to create a loop, and then I'm going to test it to see if I think it's enough, because you also want enough loop that you can get it over the button. And see, and I don't think that's going to be adequate, so we're just going to slip it out and add some more beads. There's really no set number on this. There's too many variables for it, so you just kind of have to try a couple of different things. And see, now I may be better here. You just want it to loop over the button. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. So what I'm going to do now is just run my line back through my work here, tighten it up, and I'm going to reinforce the loop at least once. And then we'll finish it off with some half hitch knots within the work. And again, a half hitch knot is where you take your needle up through a thread, underneath a thread, create a loop, and then bring your needle back through that loop, and it creates your knot. Okay, and I'm just going to flip it over here through the loop. And I chose to do the loop in the same color as I did the border, just for consistency. Okay. back through. I'm going to take it out just because it tends to pull on this edge, so I'm going to bring it back up through and bring it back down in here. Kind of reinforce that a bit, and then back through a couple of these stitches, and we'll do some half hitch knots and finish. So I'm going to knot. And right back through. Make one more knot. This is why I like to leave a nice long tail so you can do this finish work. Okay, now I'm going to run the thread through the end and snip it. Yeah. Take the nipper tool. No. And you've completed your bracelet.